Well, good morning. I'm Kristen Vellandi. I am the Director of State and Local Government Relations for UC Irvine, and I am the Chair of the Civic Affairs Council for the Newport Beach Chamber. Honored to be here this morning. Before we get started and I introduce our featured speaker, let me turn it over to our President and CEO, Steve Rosansky.
Thank you. Good morning. As she said, I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our Wake Up Newport event this crisp December morning. We've got a great program for you with Diane coming up, and you'll hear her whole background. I'm sure Kristen knows her well because she worked for her for a number of years. I do want to introduce quickly a few dignitaries that have joined us this morning. So I'll start with our own City Council, Councilwoman Robin Grant. I just wrote her 2 big checks, Sherry Friedenreich with the county. You're the pay your December 10th. Your taxes are due. Write her a check. You can give it to her right now. No. Who else? Jonathan Langford with the Planning Commission back there. And a special shout out. This is probably one of her last publicly attended official events, maybe next to the upcoming City Council meeting. Grace Leung, our City Manager back there. Grace is going to be retiring in a couple weeks after, what, 7, 8 years? I know. See, she's beaming today. Yeah, 7 years of managing the city, and she's done an excellent job. We're probably one of the top 3 fiscally, maybe the top. I don't know. Probably the top number 1 city fiscally in the state of California. AAA bond ratings, hundreds of millions of dollars in reserves, and we run budget surpluses every year. So thank you for your leadership here in town. And hopefully I got everybody. I didn't write my list like I normally do. If you're a dignitary, raise your hand. You're all dignitaries in my eyes. Not you, Alan. You're not a dignitary. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen, and I'll see you at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
All right, and I have the great privilege this morning of introducing my former boss and friend, Assemblymember Diane Dixon. I know she's no stranger to this group here, serving on the Newport Beach City Council for 8 years with 2 terms as mayor. She was elected to the 72nd Assembly District 3 years ago now, and very proud to share that she's had 18 bills signed into law by the governor, the most successful Republican in Sacramento in 2026. A member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. That's a group that seeks to get rid of the partisan labels and actually solve problems for Californians. I know that's a novel idea. She has gone to Sacramento and continued to be a fighter for business there. Recently named again, this is her 2nd time, the Legislator of the Year by the Orange County Business Council. She voted in alignment with the California Chamber of Commerce more than anyone else in the legislature this year. We are very proud to have her there in the State Assembly. We look forward now to hearing from her today on what we can expect in Sacramento in 2026. Without further ado, let's please welcome State Assembly Member Diane Dixon.
Well, good morning, everyone, on a beautiful December. It's Christmas in a month, I guess, or in a few days, and it's hard to believe, but it's a beautiful day in Newport Beach. It's always a beautiful day in Newport Beach. Coming from, oftentimes from Sacramento, I'm thinking of all the beautiful days in Newport Beach. But thank you, Kristen and Steve and the Newport Chamber. I am a chamber person through and through. I've in my business career, which preceded my public service career, I worked for a Fortune 300 company for about 30 some years. My first job, Steve knows this, my first job as a recent graduate from USC, I majored in political science, but my first job was with the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce as assistant manager of government relations. So at a very young age, I learned a lot about the business community. My parents owned a newspaper, so that's a business, but I really learned about business and the needs of business. And then when I grew in the world of business, I ended up working for a Fortune 300 company, but I still served on chamber boards in Pasadena. I worked for Avery Dennison for 30 years, headquartered at that time in Pasadena, and was served on the Pasadena Chamber Board for many years. And now I'm in Sacramento. I work very closely with the California Chamber, and I know when we get letters for every bill that the Chamber studies and looks at, they will testify in committee hearings, but we get detailed letters of their position, very well thought out, and usually a long list of California city chambers of commerce are listed, and I always look to see that Newport Beach is listed in support or opposition. Those letters are really important, incidentally, and they're very effective, and obviously they inform my voting because I vote consistently with the chamber because you know why? It's common sense, and that's really why I am in Sacramento. I enjoy being in Sacramento, even though a day doesn't go by where people are saying, how can you stand it? but you know, a couple of things. I do enjoy it because I guess I'm a policy wonk deep down. I enjoy the policy making because I am informed in my own brain of the business issues and being an advocate for business. And it's not like I'm an advocate for the Chamber of Commerce, which I am naturally, but sadly, I don't mean to begin on an unpleasant note, out of 120 members of the state legislature, I've not done an official study, but just my own observation and behavior watching, I'd say out of 120 members, 80 in the Assembly and 40 in the Senate, probably fewer than 10, I used to say 5, but I'll be more generous and say 10, have ever worked in private industry. And so when you wonder, as everyone does, where do all these bad bills, bad laws come from that are insidious to business growth? I'm vice chair of the Judiciary Committee and the Privacy and Consumer Affairs Committee, and appropriations. I'll get to appropriations in a minute. But on judiciary, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm glad I'm on judiciary because it's the insidious word I use is that most every proposed anti-business or anti-landlord or anti-business, anti-development, anti-anything that affects business, there's always a proposed remedy of a civil or criminal, if need be, penalty. And I asked my staff about 8 months ago, I said, I want somebody to add up all the regulatory agencies in California that are enabled to levy fines through legislation, through the power that the legislature gives them in their regulatory powers, and they fine businesses. Like California Air Resources Board is the prime example of fining businesses for violating a state regulation. Well, that is why in these bills I look at in the Judiciary Committee, and I have a heightened sense of awareness that they just load up these bills with fines, proposed fines, so that builds the revenue base of the regulatory agency. Those fines do not go into the state general fund. They go into the bank account of the regulatory agencies, and so it's a self-perpetuating problem that more regulation means more revenues because a chance to fine companies, businesses, for violating those regulations. And it just is a vicious circle of that, and nobody's really addressed it. It's a huge undertaking. I have my Sacramento staff looking at this as we speak, and nobody's asked this question before. Where does all that money go that we fine businesses? So I learned early on the looking at judiciary bills, anti-landlord. I mean, where does it end? I mean, I actually asked a question once, and being in the minority party, the super minority, there are only 20 of us out of 80. I'm lucky. I work both sides of the aisle. I have gotten, as Kristen said, 8 bills signed this year and 18 overall in 3 years. So I'm not going to be able to change the franchise tax code and change CARB and get rid of CARB, but at least I can work on the edges of what makes common sense to serve our communities and our local businesses in an effective way. And when I speak on common sense and work across the aisle, and it's essential to work across the aisle, because with 20, you need 41 votes. You've got to work across the aisle. And I'm proud of that record to explain the common sense realities. So my focus these last 3 years has been focused on business and being attuned to all the anti-business issues that come before the legislature. And when the legislators, the electeds, and staff, this is where a lot of the problems are. I have a great staff, so I'm not talking about my own staff, but the staffs who are just perpetual staff in Sacramento, they've never worked in private industry. And this is true on both parties. I mean, they graduate from college, they intern, they become legislative fellows, very prestigious, very smart young people, and they work on a legislative staff first as a scheduler, and then a legislative director, and then ultimately perhaps chief of staff. And then their boss, the legislator, terms out or runs for higher office, and that staff member then runs for office himself or herself. Well, they've never been in private industry. They may be Republicans. They understand the need to support our business community, but they really don't understand the impacts of what these regulations and these laws are doing to business. I actually said at one Judiciary Committee, and it was and I'm not against tenants, but I began to notice how many of you own apartment buildings? Okay, I don't. I have no dog in this fight. I just see the unfairness of it. So I asked my Sacramento staff one day when I'm looking at like the 5th tenants' rights bill, and I said, how many tenants' rights bills have been passed into law in the last 5 years? It was like 15. Why are we doing this to a lot of the people who own property, who are renting property, they're usually a couple, and it's their retirement, and it's not just big, large corporations who own, maybe now more because of the building, the housing impetus that's going on. But I try to bring a voice to small business especially, and I write a lot about this because it is not well known, the effects of chasing business out of California. I actually have right here is the final draft of an op-ed I'm submitting to the Register, which I do every so often because it makes me so mad that people don't understand what they're doing to business. How many are you in the restaurant business? Maybe none. Okay. Well, the restaurants, you may agree or disagree, but my belief is the restaurants are really being handicapped. In fact, the editorial of today's Register talks about this law that was passed that puts this workers' council, it's kind of similar to what they do in Europe, employee unions to regulate the restaurant industry in California. That is what was passed in law. I voted against it. But that is a layer of bureaucracy that's over the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry operates on, as many, like the grocery industry, operates on minimum profit levels. And it's just one more regulation on them, and their lawsuits constantly against restaurant owners on ADA infractions. I don't know if you've heard about this, but I write about this and just violations on workplace violations, that maybe there was a minor mistake. Somebody did not take their full 60-minute lunch break. It was 59 minutes, and then they get a class action lawsuit and they have to settle for $100,000. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's true. That's what I write about in this op-ed. So I am, when I started as an assistant manager of government relations when I was 22 years old, I'm still advocating for business because it is the nexus between business revenues that are paid to the state of California in the form of their employee wage and payroll taxes, their income taxes, the corporate income taxes, the income taxes of the senior executives and the high level of taxes that they pay. Those taxes are often leaving. Over 2,000 businesses have left California just in the last year. So I think the total revenue loss to the state of California is over $50 billion, and those taxes that are now being paid or not paid because Arizona, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, they don't have income taxes. I tell this story that when I first saw the light come on in my brain about 2 years ago, that the IRS publishes an annual a lot of studies. Anyway, in your mind's eye of this North America, United States, and California is over here on the left, and imagine a red arrow leaving California, going to Arizona, going to Texas, going to Florida, going to Tennessee, going to Nevada, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. The IRS tracks the movement of federal income tax payments leaving California and going to these red states, literally. Now, they don't track the loss to California of the Franchise Tax Board payments. The Franchise Tax Board doesn't do that same chart. I wish they would. That really highlights the loss to the general fund, the budget of making body or entity of the state of California. Those revenues, 2 years ago when the state had a $68 billion deficit, right now we have only an $18 billion deficit, projected to go up to $35 billion in the next 1 or 2 years, is because we're losing this revenue, and it's driven, provide the revenue that business provides. Now, if the employee doesn't go to Arizona with the company or to Florida or wherever, the employee stays here, well, the employee doesn't have a job. So there is a cost to the Californian for unemployment payment. So it's hitting the general fund budget, but no one talks about it. Why? The cost to California in the deficit creating situation by being unfriendly to business. I'll just close on that, but you're all business people, so you probably all experience this. Elon, there was a biography of Elon of Elon Musk a couple years ago, which I read, and this quote I've quoted constantly. He wanted to build a second plant in California. You may remember this. He has the first plant in Fremont. And he goes to Governor Newsom and says, we've got to build another plant. It'll be 5,000 employees. I've talked with all your agency, regulatory, CARB, everybody else. They say it's going to take 5 years to get the permits done. And is there anything you could do, Governor? This is what Elon Musk is quoted in this book saying to Newsom. And he said, well, if this is what they say, that's what they say. You got to follow the rules. So he packs up and goes to Governor Abbott in Texas and says, I've got this plant for potential 5,000 employees. How long will it take me start to finish to get a plant up and running in Texas? They said 18 months. So that's why there are 5,000 more jobs, people working in Texas and a Tesla plant. So it is a problem. Now, I don't know what the solution is. It's easy to say we have all the CEQA, CARB, all these rules that are changing. I think Governor Newsom is realizing that it's just, I don't know, he's never cited it about business. He keeps saying that California is the fourth largest economy in the world. Yeah, Silicon Valley makes an important contribution to that, but the average employee, average worker, small businesses, small restaurants, small franchise owners are not happy in California. So I'm proud of my recognition by the state chamber, but I'm not done yet. So I've got a lot more to do. But anyway, let me get back to what's really going on. Another area of our own community, and I represent in Assembly District 72, I represent 37 miles of coastline from Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, and then I go inland, but the coastline. And we all know how important the coastline is just into our quality of life, but also to our business life. And so I've had a couple of seminars jointly with UCI, and actually Kristen helped me get this started 2 years ago. We call it the business of beaches, the economic impact of having beaches, just to capture the essence of it. We all know it's beautiful. We all know that it drives visitors. But if we don't have beaches like in South County, where the beach erosion is significant, Newport Beach, beaches are eroding all the way down from Seal Beach. So it's really a problem. So if we don't have quality beaches or any beaches, South County may not have any beaches. We're not there yet. We don't have Seal, our cities will be Seal, Huntington, Newport, Laguna. How attractive is that for people coming to visit? There's no beach, and that's a reality, but it's fixable, and that's what through the business of beaches is emphasizing the billions of dollars in Newport Beach alone, over $1 billion in Newport Beach, the economic benefit and all the related, harbor-related, water-related services, hospitality, restaurants, hotels are significantly impacted by our beach economy, and the total transient occupancy tax that contributes to our city budget here in Newport Beach is a significant contributor. The top three revenue sources to the city are property taxes, TOT, and sales tax. So we have to keep our economy thriving. So that is really, Kristen mentioned the Problem Solver Caucus. I am a problem solver. I mean, we all are business people. We solve problems. But working to create greater awareness that we need to protect our businesses. It's not just our beaches. It's not just oceans rising, and that gets political and whatever. It's really fundamental to keeping our beaches clean and protected, and finding ways, and it really involves federal money, because there's no money at the state, federal money to help transport unused sand. Prado Reservoir east of here is at capacity with sentiment, and they need to get rid of it, and it would be great sand product to transport to the beaches to distribute. It just costs millions of dollars. So this is a problem we're working on. Congressman Calvert, who's been very helpful on the dredging that was just recently announced here in Newport Harbor. It takes Army Corps funding and getting on the list of Army Corps of Engineers on their budget allocation. It's a process. And when I was on the city council, we worked for years to get dredging, and finally, after 10 years of advocating with Congress, got $10 million, and the city helped pay for its share as well. So that, going forward, whatever I could do in Sacramento, when I first got up there my first year, there was money in the bank up there, and each Assembly and Senate person could recommend, with a lot of support validation, recommend capital projects that could receive state funding out of the state budget. And I was very successful in getting $1.5 million for the city of Newport Beach for our water project, the trash, what do I call it? The trash interceptor up there in the back bay. Took 10 years with 8 agencies involved in approving the permits, and it was just finished installation and dedicated earlier this year. And so it is trash collecting. And then up in the San Gabriel River, Seal Beach is inundated with trash. The whole beachfront is on a heavy rain storm day. It's just a trash yard. It's a dump yard of trash. It's unsightly. All the volunteers come out and clean. The surf rider and the coastal cleanup. And I said, you guys need to have a trash interceptor. And so I brought the Seal Beach City Council people down here to talk with the Newport Beach Public Works people. And we're working on it. It's a little bit more complicated. The San Gabriel River is between Los Angeles County, the city of Long Beach, and Orange County, the city of Seal Beach. And there are like 13 different cities that feed into the San Gabriel River. So it's a little bit more complicated. But just yesterday, Cooper Stroll, who's my district director sitting in the back, everybody should know Cooper, many of you probably do, just told me that we're working with Los Angeles County and Orange County Public Works together agree that this should be a joint two-county project. When you get 2 counties involved, that's complicated, but we're working forward. And now my next step is to update Supervisor Janice Hahn in Los Angeles. I've talked with her a couple of times on this project. She's responsive because the Olympics are coming and they don't want trash in the San Gabriel River. So there is a good incentive here. So I think we're moving this forward. The LA County Public Works is supportive of funding the next phase of the research or the implementation of the design, the facility design. There actually will be multiple different trash interceptors, maybe not like the big water wheel we have over here, but we've come up with another solution. And so we're always working forward to keep our water systems clean. And I'm really excited about that because that wasn't a bill or a law. We're just doing it because it's the right thing to do, and getting different governmental jurisdictions to work together without a mandate other than clean water. And an interesting thing, you'll learn about the environmental implications of all these projects, and we want to protect our fish and wildlife, and all that is important, of course. In the San Gabriel River, I had no idea that there are sea turtles in the San Gabriel River because they gravitate to warm water and when it's warm. And so we're designing this trash interceptor system that will protect the little pools where the turtles are. So the environmentalists are okay with that. So hopefully that will help move things forward. What else? Sober living. How many of you have been following over the years in Orange County, Newport Beach, the sober living homes? Just know that's one of my primary areas of work, and I'm proud that I've gotten 2 bills, I think, signed into law. What I did most importantly was I wanted facts. Business person, I want facts. I want data to support the argument. And so I had my staff in Sacramento told me how this is done. This is the first year I was up there 3 years ago, so I've got approval. We took a legislation to get approval for a legislative audit by the independent state legislative auditor to tell me about how sober living homes are managed and operating in the state of California, but primarily Orange County. And that study took about 18 months to complete, and it came out a year ago. And some very important facts related to sober living. Now, Orange County, many cities have tried to fight Sacramento before my time. We don't want them in our neighborhoods. Well, that argument doesn't go very far because it sounds like we're elitists, and to a certain extent it did sound that way. So I've come at it from a different way because I realized as a result of this audit that people are not getting well. People go in to sober living homes, I'll address that concept in a moment, to get well, to get rehabilitated, to be treated for their alcohol or drug addictions. And another insidious issue is that they go into these homes, they don't get well, they don't get treated, and then they get booted out on the street and they become homeless. So it's a vicious circle. So we're addressing it one step at a time. But just so you know, we are working on it, and it's only because on a bill that I got through last year related to death. You might remember in Santa Ana Heights about 3 years ago in August, a person who was a resident in a sober living home up in Santa Ana Heights walked out unsupervised into the street from the home in a residential cul-de-sac, pounded on doors, got into one residential home at 4 in the morning. The homeowner comes down with his gun, shoots the invader, and he died. The invader died. He was not charged with murder, with self-defense and protecting your own home. But the issue still remained: is why did that patient? Why was he unobserved and unsupervised and exited that front door and went into another residence? Well, we learned a lot that the agency that licenses rehabilitation homes, state housing, what I'm thinking, my mind went blank. HCD, yeah. Healthcare. Healthcare, as a Department of Healthcare division. They're supposed to regulate this. Well, I found out they don't regulate any medical condition. They only detoxify. So that's important, but there's no medical treatment. So when people go in there thinking their insurance is going to cover that detoxification, it's not medical. There's no medical personnel on the premises. I did not know that. So we addressed, and the rest of the Orange County delegation in Sacramento, bipartisan, bicameral, each now is using this audit as a basis for proposing legislation to address the deficiencies in the state system. And so HCD is supposed to license and regulate. They license, but they don't regulate. And the complaint structure, they don't address complaints for 368 days or something like that. So that's being addressed, and others are addressing that. My bill last year that was signed into law addresses when a death occurs, that the cause of death and the remediation of why that that issue was allowed to happen has to be addressed, and their procedures have to change. There's the fundamental issue with the mental illness and alcohol and drug addiction is related, and why they're on our streets and create homelessness is because, as you may know, in the 60s, all the mental institutions were closed, and local government was supposed to take on this responsibility, which never was funded. And so people with mental illness are somehow addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they're trying to get into some facilities to help them, but they're not helping them. The second group of state agencies is called the Department of Social Services. They do provide, these facilities do provide medical assistance, and it's covered by insurance. So that is fine, but the people have to get into the right homes. There are good operators in Orange County, but there are a lot of bad operators. The big aha moment on sober living homes, I will not use that term anymore, because sober living homes that you hear people going into, and family members, whatever, going into a sober living home, they are not licensed, they're not managed, they're not regulated. If you know anyone who says, and these are the people coming from Ohio and Indiana sending their children to Newport Beach to get sober, and they go into a sober living home and pay $25,000 a month, it is highway robbery, and these children, young people, are not getting treated. the only personnel that are in these sober living homes are former addicts themselves. So there's no medical treatment, there's no medical insurance, there's nothing. So if you know anyone who does this, don't let them. So they're not regulated. They're just groups of people living together trying to help each other, but there's drugs and alcohol in these premises. So a lot of work to do, but we've gotten the ear, and I was able to do this because I work across the aisle with the chairwoman of the Assembly Health Committee, who happens to be, her name is Mia Bonta, and she's the wife of the Attorney General, and she's the one who really was resistant to elitist Orange County. I mean, she would admit it if she were sitting here, that we just want these people out of our neighborhoods. And I began to realize that's the story I need, the narrative I have to change with her, the Assemblymember Bonta. So when I was sitting down with her with my package of bills this past year, because she has to, everybody has to have that discussion, and so she decides, the chair of the committee decides whether that committee will hear those bills. And I told her stories of people I know, family members, my own family members. My sister has a child, or 2 children that had drug problems, and my sister is a widow because her husband died of alcoholism, and he'd been in and out of these sober living homes. This was like 25 or 30 years ago. I told her my personal story. And I said, we want people to be well. We don't want to just say, don't come to our neighborhoods. If they're in our neighborhoods, they need to get well. And I said, these are my bills on the death. That was straightforward. I have 2 other bills that are coming back in January. She's allowed to stay alive. One of them she's not as enthusiastic about, but one with a distancing requirement of a minimum, I'd like 500 feet per separating these facilities, because what these nefarious operators have done buying up adjacent homes in our neighborhoods, they've really recreated the institutionalization of these patients. So they're all operated by the same company. The patients are transported together, and they've been reinstitutionalized. And that point made a very strong impact on Assemblymember Bonta when I explained to her that these people are they're not being treated. They're just being shuttled along and reinstitutionalized and not getting the proper care and rehabilitation that they need for their addictions. So I was very pleased when this bill that was approved, it was on the night of adjournment. It was at 2 in the morning. We adjourned at 3 a.m. on September 12th, 13th, the morning of the 13th. And my bill came back to the floor with some minor Senate amendments. It had been through the whole process, approved unanimously, and came back, and I gave my technical amendments, and then I gave her credit for letting it get through the Assembly Committee and was able to work its way through the whole process. And I gave her credit, and so I sat down. The bill was unanimously passed and sent on to the governor. She came up to me. She sits a couple rows behind me, and she thanked me for recognizing her. And I said, I appreciate you helping me. I'm helping you. You're helping me. I have 2 more bills. I'll talk to you in January. We've got more work to do. But it's relationships. And she saw, I mean, it's like, and then Lori Davies, Assemblywoman Lori Davies, and Avelino Valencia in Santa Ana, and we've maybe shifted the whole narrative that we're trying to help people. And that's what we should do, is to help people, not just push them out on the street, because that creates a homeless problem. So keep your fingers crossed that my new good friend Mia Bonta will be working with me. Public safety is another big issue. I probably don't have enough time. Where's Steve? How much time? Another hour? Real quick, public safety and e-bikes, real quick, because I've had bills on both. So, again, working across the aisle, the new chair of the Public Safety Committees is Nick Schultz from Burbank. Before I met with him for coffee last January, all the new people, you sit down and want to get to know people, how you're going to work with them, and public safety is a very important committee. The prior chair wouldn't let any reform get through his committee, but Nick seemed to be a reasonable person, and he served a few years as a prosecutor in the State Department of Justice. So I thought, well, maybe I'm going to have some influence here. And so I saw on his bio that he had done some human trafficking prosecutions. So I said, I really want to get into human trafficking. I had a town hall prior to that, before I met Nick a year ago, in my district office, kind of a meeting, not a town hall, to understand with the Sheriff's Department human trafficking. And I learned that Orange County has its data on the arrests and the victims and the situation in Orange County, but there's no collective aggregate of data for the state of California on who is arrested on human trafficking and how many victims. There's no data. So all these bills, people are always, myself, I want to introduce bills to prevent, eliminate human trafficking, and only to find out that no one has the data. And so when talking to Assemblymember Schultz, he told me this. He says there's no central database in the State Department of Justice which lists all the crimes committed in California, from homicides, assaults, and batteries, and rapes, and murders, but nothing on human trafficking. So it was really a compelling story. I said, all right, I'm going to do this bill. I said, will you support it? And he says, absolutely. He got it out of his Public Safety Committee. It came to the floor, got unanimous support. What we have is to now a state law effective January 1st that will require, I hate mandates, but this is important, all local law enforcements will now submit their data on their arrests of perpetrators of human trafficking, because there are arrests a lot, particularly in Orange County, as well as the number of victims. So now we're going to have a database to know the numbers. Now I'm going to do it, and that was signed into law. So that is wonderful, and the governor signed that. So now we will have a database. Now I'll do another bill this year to break down that data, to do more analysis as to the number of victims, what their ages are. This is the real crime. I mean, they're 12 and 13 and 14 years old, and then they get pregnant. There's a horrible underworld of what's going on with human trafficking in California. So it's really a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue that we could all get our arms around, but we needed the data to manage it, and the support of the chair of public safety, which now I have a good relationship with him. I can't go overboard and change the whole penal code, but at least I can work on issues that are really important. Speaking about issues I cannot change, but it needs to be changed, nearly 70% of the voters in California supported Prop 36 last November. Here we are, a year later. And it's not funded. The governor funded $1 million, and he said if every single county in California voted to support Prop 36, and he said if the counties want to do it, they should fund it. Well, nobody has any money. But anyway, Prop 36 needs to be funded so that the programs really on the mental illness side of the issue, mental illness treatment, can be funded. That's public safety. E-bikes, how many people care about e-bikes? Everybody's working on e-bikes. I went up to Sacramento because of my experience with the boardwalk. I wanted to eliminate e-bikes on the boardwalk. The only problem is the Department of Motor Vehicle Code, or the Motor Vehicle Code, said, well, there's no definition of boardwalk in the state vehicle code. So we can't change that, and it's going to take 5 years. We're doing our new IT system, and it's a big problem. So I had to kind of trim this on the edges. I wanted to limit the speed limit to no more than 15 miles per hour. Then I run into the bike lobby, and they wouldn't let it be heard and get out of the Assembly Transportation Committee. So one morning, another relationship story, we're all always at John Wayne for the 8 o'clock flight to Sacramento, and this young man, taps me on the shoulder, says, hi, Assemblymember Dixon, I'm Mark. What's Mark's last name? I can't remember Mark's last name. Anyway, Mark. He said, I'm the reason that your bill didn't get through the Assembly Transportation on e-bikes. I said, you are? Real quick. And so I said, well, okay, I want to, everybody, the state, everybody, it's a terrible problem. Injuries, children, adolescents, all speed limits, lack of education, accidents, brain damage. It's a terrible problem. Help me do my part to solve this problem. So I sat down with him, and my staff sat down with him. And so I've got a series of bills I got through this year that relates to prohibiting, he told me, class 3 bikes. Those are the fastest, the biggest ones. Cooper's giving me the high sign here. Bikes that are really unregulated, but youth, people, children under age 16 come in with their parents' credit card. This is the story he told me, and could buy these bikes for $5,000. I mean, that happens in our community. There's opportunity there. So my bill prohibits anyone under the age of 16 to buy or to be riding that bike, class 3, big big throttle bike. And the governor signed that into law. So we're chipping away at this. And my next bill will deal with, and the city of Newport Beach has just done some code changes, the municipal code to it, and the city of Irvine about involving parents and making parents responsible if their children are not educated or are not driving responsibly. So we need to have a statewide solution right now. There's some studies out from other legislators that the report's due in another, I think another year, and we can really put some mass changes. But I've got some bills that I'm going to be doing this year. Anyway, I've overstayed my welcome, but I just want you to know, am I doing Q&A?
Yes.
Okay. But just to let me close on this, it's always an honor to represent the business and certainly the people of Newport Beach and Seal Beach and Huntington Beach and Laguna Beach and beyond. I do enjoy my time in Sacramento because I enjoy the fight. I enjoy making arguments that nobody else will make on the record, and somebody's got to do it, and so I'll do it. My experience in local government business and local government, being on the city council, has benefited me greatly. I wish there was a requirement, would never happen, that there'd be a requirement for anyone to serve an elective office to have experience in business and experience in local government, because those policies that come from people without that type of experience, in my opinion, is really not good for California, but that's a whole other speech. All right, well, I'm happy to take your questions. Good morning.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, let's go ahead. If everyone has a moment, we will like to open it up to a few questions for the Assembly member. If she can give us a little bit more time. And I wanted to start with one. I heard Steve over here asking if you could give a little clarification on what Prop 36 was for folks in the room that maybe didn't remember that one.
Thank you very much for reminding me. We all voted, you probably all voted yes, and really was to strengthen our criminal justice codes, the penal codes for crimes. You all remember, you know, the break-ins in the retail stores and the closing of retail stores and the mass break-ins because there were holes and gaps in existing criminal law that allowed, for example, no one could be prosecuted for less than 900. This was Prop 47 10 years ago, and so now it's taken 10 years to see how the bad impacts of loosening our penal code. So, and 10 years ago allowed for anyone, if they steal $950, it won't be prosecuted. Well, what does that tell the criminal element? Well, they practically take their calculator and add it up to $949. Well, Prop 36, among other things, many tightening, penal code tightening. But for example, it said in a single person who steals the aggregate of all the things that they steal is more than $950, they're subject to prosecution or they'll be arrested and tried. Fentanyl was an important part of that as well. Understand that ballot measure was a result of the failure of the state to fix these problems. When everybody was saying, why doesn't the legislature do anything? All these thefts, these crimes are being committed. Fentanyl, if Sheriff Barnes were here, he would say we've got our handle on in Orange County on fentanyl because the law has been strengthened now. In that, Prop 36 was a strengthening and an admonishment for someone who is now more than an admonishment. They can be charged for murder if they have sold fentanyl and someone dies. That's now in Prop 36. So it was a cleanup of the weakening of the penal code, the criminal laws in Prop 47 that created this crime wave that has gone through California. You don't hear so much about that anymore. There's still a lot in Orange County, we have murders, you read it every day, every week. Crime is still a problem. We have gangs coming from Los Angeles County into Orange County, and the DA, Todd Spitzer, is certainly working on that with the sheriff. But anyway, Prop 36 was a cleanup on loosening of criminal laws that are tightened, but counties need the funding to implement. The mental illness part of it is included, and that is to provide treatment for the mentally ill so they're not going onto the streets and committing crimes. But we need, you can write I will say, anything you feel strongly about, write a letter. It does matter. It does make a difference. It gets added in the public record that thousands of people care about things. In my office, I say this all the time, my staff responds. We've had over 12,000 letters this year, or 3 years? This year, 12,000 people, because I'm always telling people to write us, and we're from the government, we're here to help, okay? That's what I do. President Reagan once said that as a criticism of government. He was probably right at the time, but I am trying to make government work for my constituents. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much, and thank you, Newport Chamber, and thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, one more time. Let's give a big round of applause for Assemblymember Diane Dixon. Thank you so much. And before you head out, I want to turn it back over to Steve Rosansky for a few announcements.
Great talk. If we had another hour, Diane could still be talking about what's going on in Sacramento. So thank you for all those updates, Diane, and good luck with your run for. Diane, she didn't mention it, but she's running for supervisor in the fall of November, or next November. Oh, June. Oh, the June primary. That's true. That's right. Huh? In any event, we're almost done for the year, but we do have a couple things that are happening. Next Monday, if you want to join us for our Jingle Mingle event over at the Hyatt Regency Newport Beach, the one it's on Jamboree. Love to have you. You can check out newportbeach.com for that. We're kicking off our annual Christmas Boat Parade auction, our online auction tomorrow. It'll be going live from the 6th to the 16th. So Annette back there, she led up the effort. We got like 220, 30 things, and I've got a half a dozen more in my car. So we'll probably have about 250, 260 items, lots of gift cards to restaurants and hotel stays and all kinds of other stuff. And then, of course, our biggest event of the year, the Christmas Boat Parade, is December 17th to the 21st this year. So hopefully you can make it down to the harbor every night, 2.5 hour long parade, 14 miles around the harbor. The drone shows are going to be back this year as well. So it will be 2 shows a night from the top of the Balboa Bay Resort, and 2 shows a night that'll launch from Peninsula Park. So virtually anywhere in the harbor, you'll be able to see at least one of the shows. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. And then the chamber will be closed, I think, between Christmas and New Year's. If anybody has a business and wants to put one of our boat parade posters in it, or window or something, please take one. We have some cards there to give out as well. Have a great holiday season. We'll be back next year in not the first week in December or January, which is traditionally Wake Up Newport. I think that's January 1st or 2nd. So we're going to move it to, I think, January 9th. And I don't have the speaker yet, but I'm sure it'll be a good one. So we'll see you then. Take care.